Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to DC Studios Podcast here on DC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andy B, as always. First of all, everyone who follows throughout the Penguin Podcast coverage with me and Vanessa, thank you so much. I hope you all had time to recover from the crying and the tears of Oz's fucking piece of shit moves in that episode because R.I.P. Vic. R.I.P. Vic. But now it's time. We're moving now to the next DC TV show, which is Creature Commandos. Which is why you're welcome now to the Creature Commandos podcast on DC Podcast / DC Studios Podcast. And Vanessa, is will not be joining me at least in the beginning. We will see if because she said in the last episode that she's gonna take a little break. But listen, she's always welcome to come on whenever. She's one of our main hosts here. So, but I will not be doing Creature Commandos alone. And it's for a new show here on the DC Podcast now, where I feel like it's also time to bring in some new voices. It's been a hot minute. It's been a hot minute since we had new hosts joining us, and some of you may already be familiar with him if you follow multiverseofcolor.com for where we cover a lot of TV shows and movies and comics and you name it. Some of you may be familiar with him from Dave Pena's vodka stream that I'm on sometimes during Fridays. But it's my honor to welcome our newest member to DC Podcast and one of my fine writers of multiverseofcolor.com, Mr. Philip Barker. Hello.
I don't need a schedule, so douche-lot. Open the freaking door. How's it going, Andy? How you doing, man?
Doing well. We're here. Finally, the journey here has been fun. We got to, we're both big DC fans, and we've talked.
What gave that away?
What gave it away? But yeah, no. So for people who just also know, because this is what I refer to him. I refer to him as Lip. Everyone who knows he's either Philip or Phil. Lip is short for Phil or Philip, because we love the show Shameless. So that's a nod to that. So if people are like, who's he talking to? Why is he talking to someone named Lip who's not even on screen? That's Lip. That's Lip that's there. Great. So but first, let's do a little introduction of you. What should people know about you when it comes to DC? And tell us a little about yourself.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a Snyder cultist. No. Not entirely. No, I mean, what's the best way to say this, right? Like, I have been a huge DC fan since I could walk. I mean, the first DC superhero I remember just having a giant affinity for is Batman, followed closely by Superman. You and I became friends through the vodka stream, and then you graciously asked me to start writing for Multiverse of Color, of which I was like, do I want to do this? Because I wasn't sure if I could step my toe into journalism.
He was a little nervous.
I was, and I have found myself quite enjoying it, even though some days are a little more head-racking than others. But even still, like, I still find time to get my stuff done. And I don't mean that in like a rush kind of way, but seriously, like, when it comes to writing my reviews, I try and make them as unbiased as possible, but also just with a lot of love as well. Like, I mentioned my love for Batman. That really stems from like the likes of Batman Forever, the animated series, as well as like the Batman show, Batman Beyond, which actually I did get my Batmobile. I'm going to unbox that later today.
Nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I mentioned, I'm a Snyder cultist. I'm not one of those crazy loony ones on Twitter.
This is one of the good ones.
Yeah, I do love Zack Snyder. I had the pleasure of meeting him in person in 2023, and a lot of the DC live action stuff that I do really love a lot is predominantly from his time under the DC Films banner. So the likes of, like, for example, my favorite Superman movie is Man of Steel, and up to that point I didn't really have a favorite Superman movie, and I'm of the mind that Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is like one of the greatest comic book films ever made, even though Andy and I have lovely discussions about Lex Luthor in that movie all the time.
But see, kids, you can have different opinions and still be friends. You don't have to go on Tumblr and start tearing each other apart. Like, you can be very subjective, very demure, and all that at the same time. So it's perfectly fine.
I mean, hell, I even threw in a couple references to other Lex Luthors and Supermans in my latest review of Superman and Lois. How the chemistry between Michael Cudlitz and Tyler Hoechlin is very evocative of the likes of, at least in my opinion, of Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum, Clancy Brown, and either Tim Daly or George Newbern, take your pick, and of course Henry Cavill and Jesse Eisenberg. I mean, sure, some people would disagree with me on that, and that's totally fine. But even still, like going into the newest era of DC stuff, like Annie and I have been talking about this stuff for at least the last year since James Gunn has announced his slate of DC stuff. And I feel like in the beginning there may have been a twinge of bitterness, but as time has gone on, it's like, okay, the dust has settled, the bandage has been torn off. We understand where things are currently, and it's not exactly James Gunn's fault that Henry Cavill was completely screwed out of coming back as Superman. That's all falls under Warner Brothers. But at the same time, it's like, while I've been critical of James Gunn, Andy knows this, and even Andy's been a little critical in his own way as well. Like, we're still open to what he's going to do with DC. And I would say, since a year ago, since he's announced his stuff, he now has one project in the can coming out literally a week from now. I don't know if that's, am I okay to say that?
The date has been announced. Everyone knows when the show's coming out. It's all good.
Right. So as of this recording, in very, very short amount of time, there will be the first project of James Gunn's DCU. He will have, by the end of next year, at least 2 more projects in the can in the form of his Superman movie, as well as Peacemaker Season 2. And then by the next year after that, there will be a Supergirl movie, as well as a Lanterns TV show. I have to admit, the man has brought a sense of stability to the DC brand that has not been seen in, I would say, over a decade.
Yeah, it's, because I remember the days when we would have like so many headlines coming out of like, now this film is getting announced, this film is getting announced. I'm like, I know that there's been the rumors of Daniel Craig maybe doing sort of wrong, but like it took me, I think I told you this like last week when we talked, was that it took me back to the days of Black Hawk with Steven Spielberg, and that just went out. Shit just went out the window. So yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot more stability now with James Gunn's DC universe. Again, here's the thing: like with any franchise, there's gonna be things that we love. There's gonna be things that we don't love. Like the MCU that has proven that for now almost 20. Wait, when did them 2008?
Iron Man was in 2008. We're coming up on 2025, so it'll be about 17 years. It's almost, they're creeping on 20. By the time they get to 2028, they will have 20 years.
Yeah, so that's it's one of those things where like there will be ups and downs with any franchise, and so but again, I felt with James Gunn, like I like so much of what he's announced already. I like that, I like when my favorite show right now is James Gunn on Friends, when he can debunk so many dumb. Oh, by the way, cussing is allowed, so we can curse on this show for all our viewers out there. I love when he debunked all these fucking little scoopers that like are saying the Batman Part 2 is being canceled. This actor is now rumored for Batman in The Brave and the Bold. They're doing this with Lanterns, or they're doing this with Booster Gold or whatever. And I'm just like, guys, come on.
It's like, just stop. You're making a complete ass of yourself. Just stop. And in fairness, the show we're talking about is an adult-rated comedy, so sure, let's let F-bombs fly all we fucking want. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm right there with you. Like, I am still, and I will hammer this until I cannot hammer it anymore. I am still salty about Rick Flag Jr. biting the dust in the Suicide Squad, and I will never probably not get over that in a fun way. But seriously, like, one of my favorite things is much like you, is I love watching James Gunn just swat down these stupid rumors and just being like, nope, it's not true. I love it. I love it. I love that so much, especially when someone posed him, was like, "Oh, hey, is this Joker series actually happening between Batman Part 2 and 3?" And he was like, "There's no truth to that whatsoever." Thank you, James. Thank you.
Because I remember there was someone who got mad at him because he's like, "Why are you speaking for Matt Reeves?" I'm like, because he's the president of DC Studios. Why would he not be responding about these things? Just because he's not directing or writing it, he's still I'm still sure James Gunn will be an EP on the Batman, at least credited as an EP, because
I think
it's under his.
Safran was credited as a producer on the first movie. I think I could
Oh,
be wrong about that. I'd have to go back and watch the credits, but I'm like 90% sure that is the case. Because I remember way back when they were doing, I think, press for Aquaman and Shazam. Like even back then, Peter Safran was talking about how diametrically different, like in tone, the Batman was going to be considered to, the likes of like Aquaman and Shazam and Birds of Prey and all that shit. So I think he is, but I could be wrong about that. Don't hold me to it. But they are, in fact, executive producers on Creature Commandos. James Gunn wrote all 7 episodes. Peter Safran produced it. It's also important to remember that Peter Safran is the other half of DC Studios. He is the other co-CEO. I know everyone likes to say James Gunn. And I'm not saying you, but like everyone kind of seems to forget that like there is another part of that equation. So
yeah. And I like I think I said this before on this podcast before, is that I like that there's 2 of them. I like that there is, like that's. I think sometimes maybe that's something that Kevin Feige could use, like because sometimes like when you again, I love a lot of things about the MCU, but there's things where like I'm like, Kevin, I think you need to get out of your own house a little bit, so to speak. And
I think Kevin Feige is in an interesting position to where I think he can just kind of sit back and hopefully I would imagine let other people make decisions. Case in point, like how Brad Winderbaum is like basically the head of Marvel Studios Television at this point. I feel like Kevin Feige at this point is like, yeah, he's the watcher, he's the lore master, but the fine details of everything, he's got to just give the okay for anyone else who's working on a show. And I feel like in a way that is what James Gunn does. Whereas Peter Safran, it's often been referred that he's the numbers guy, he's the budgetary person, he's the person behind the scenes making, all the, cost cutting decisions, or I wouldn't say cost cutting decisions, but the cost effective decisions, I guess I should say. Whereas James Gunn has said repeatedly that he enjoys being on the creative side of things, and he likes being a part of the storytelling devices, and he likes the world building, he likes a lot of that stuff. And honestly, this show is very evocative of that, if I'm being brutally honest.
Yeah, no, I feel like again, with having someone like him, like he doesn't have to focus on like the financial side as much. He can focus on also attracting more storytellers to DC Studios, because now, like I mean, because like we can go back 2 years from now, and remember the time of all the cutting that David Zaza was doing. So like who would want to work under those circumstances? But like if I'm a filmmaker in Hollywood and I get an opportunity to sit down with James Gunn and like and it's like, okay, he's my boss, he's in charge. Okay, like it feels way more safe. But yeah, no, we're very excited to have you joining that work, and there's so much decent stuff we're gonna have to talk about over the next couple of years. So in the realm of news, there hasn't really been like a lot of announcements besides Star Rock with Daniel Craig, but we haven't heard yet from Mr. James Gunn about it. I wonder if it was a premature announcement. I would not imagine Daniel Craig in that as that character. I'm like, if you're gonna give us Daniel Craig, give us him in a primary role, like because Sergeant Rock is not. I mean, I don't even know much about Sergeant Rock. So, what are your thoughts on this? If this is true at all?
Well, it's funny because I remember I just saw in passing, it was either within the last 48 hours that James Gunn clarified, like, yeah, we're casting people for primary roles to play, in live action and in animation or whatever. But when it comes to smaller stuff, I feel like if this were to apply to, say, a Sergeant Rock, and say Sergeant Rock may or may not appear in Creature Commandos, I feel like the idea was, okay, if this character is going to appear somewhere else, he quite hasn't been cast yet, therefore we just get someone to stand in for the moment. And when it comes to, say, a Sergeant Rock movie done by, I believe it's Luca Guadagnino, I believe is the director who's allegedly attached to it via the Deadline article that came out. Again, as you mentioned, like James Gunn has not confirmed or denied this. It could be a premature announcement, as we've seen with past DC Universe news pertaining to the likes of like Skylar Gisondo being cast as Jimmy Olsen, or Andy Muschietti being helming the Brave and the Bold Batman movie. You mentioned to me like we could pretty much take it to the bank if a major trade is going through with it at this point. It is true. I mean, hell, look at what happened with the Green Lantern casting announcements. Kyle Chandler was announced as Hal Jordan like a good 2 weeks before James Gunn outright confirmed it, right after the Aaron Pierre casting had happened. So I feel like if this is the case and Luca Guadagnino and Daniel Craig are reteaming again following their film, I think it's Queer, a movie that they just released together. They just did together. If they are coming and teaming together for a Sergeant Rock movie, to me, if this is the case, I feel like this is, yes, it's probably predominantly a Sergeant Rock film. Is this in any way connected to a character possibly from Creature Commandos, i.e. GI Robot? Quite possibly. I could see that being the case. Just on the whole, though, I feel like my familiarity with the character of Sergeant Rock, it's probably in the same realm as you. Like, I've got very little bits of knowledge of the character. Like, I remember there being like a 10-minute short of Sergeant Rock being attached to one of the animated movies so many years ago. But essentially, it's a World War II character. I feel like if this movie does happen, it'll more than likely be a period piece, which is why someone of Daniel Craig's caliber, great actor, but do you see him sticking around in a universe being tied down to a giant contract? No, not really.
True.
That's why I could see him playing a role like, Sergeant Rock and having that like a gritty World War II epic. And, maybe GI Robot shows up and kills some Nazis. I don't know. That'd be cool.
No.
But like, I feel like just the idea of having Daniel Craig in a DC universe, but in a story, because again, James Gunn is all about storytelling and not necessarily having things be interconnected in such a direct way that leads to the next thing, but just more so.
Yeah, no Infinity Stones here.
No Infinity Stones, but just having things feel like, yes, this is a part of our world, and this is a story that has happened in our world more than anything.
Plus, there could be some cool, like GI Robot. There's some cool kids we could see like from that era. Like, this could be a way of kind of like, referencing Wonder Woman. We could have, because I remember Rebecca Johnson, who does Supergirl Radio, and I remember back in the day we were talking about Blackhawk. Like, we were like, what about Lady Blackhawk, for example? We could see her. So yeah, I mean, if this happens, cool, great. If it doesn't happen, like, again, I don't need, like, if it doesn't happen, then there's a reason it probably didn't work out. And I rather that they don't move forward part they don't feel safe in. So, for example, I know like another party that's been announced, or it's been reported, is the Bane Deathstroke movie, for example. And
right.
James Gunn has now like very much confirmed that Deathstroke is coming to the DCU, but he hasn't confirmed that that project is what it is. But I'm like, hey, listen, if that Bane and Deathstroke movie ends up happening, it ends up having like Secret Six or something, like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, listen, like, I'm here for different pair-ups of characters. I'm here for different types of projects. Again, like something like Sergeant Rock could work great, even though I'm like, have we not seen enough of World War II at this point? But that's just that's neither here nor there. But yeah, otherwise it's been low on news. I mean, James Gunn has been doing a lot of press lately for Creature Commandos coming up, and of course, people have gotten updates for various DC Universe projects. We know that now Lanterns is seemingly heading for like Lip was saying before, like 2026, and yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we're not having to feel stressed about this new rise of a DC franchise, because we've been suffering for the last few years, having to see so much changes behind the scenes and everything, so it's nice that we don't have that chaos anymore going on. But today we're here to because when you guys will be watching it, it will be just a few days away from the 2-part premiere of Creature Commandos on Max, and we've seen the whole season, so we're gonna give our advanced review. And we can't give any spoilers, of course, but we're gonna give our impressions of Creature Commandos, who some of our favorite characters might be, and we will try a few teasers here and there. But so for your overall intake of seeing Creature Commandos again, because these are probably characters that you didn't necessarily grew up with as a DC fan, because I only the first time I heard Creature Commandos was January 2023.
So for me, when I remember when this was initially announced, and this was the first thing on the slate, because again, let's jump the clock back about maybe almost 2 years now, because the announcement came at the tail end of January of 23. It came that Creature Commandos was first, Waller was second, then the Superman film was going to be the real kickoff. And to your point, like, yeah, I didn't really grow up with any of these characters at all. I mean, Rick Flag Sr. doesn't exactly have like the strongest presence in comics. He's honestly just kind of a character that's mentioned there, and then they kind of jump into Rick Flag Jr. as being the head of Task Force X or whatever, who's basically the underdog to Amanda Waller. I knew about Frankenstein from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I read that briefly in New 52. Weasel is actually a mainstay character in John Ostrander's Suicide Squad run from way back in the 80s. And Dr. Phosphorus is, of course, I wouldn't say well-known Batman villain, but he is, technically speaking, a Batman villain. Don't really know too much about the Bride, although obviously there's a lot of connection there with Frankenstein, but that is also in conjunction with, like, there's the Frankenstein's monster and then the Bride of Frankenstein. That's been a concept that's been around for years and years, even predating DC and their inevitable creation in that canon. And then Nina Mazursky, I had absolutely no idea who this character was. Like, I have literally no pre-existing knowledge of this character until I saw that she was going to be in the show, and I was like, oh, that's a neat looking character. I know nothing of her, but okay, let's get down to it. Honestly, like, this show was really surprising because, as I mentioned, like, I'm a little more critical of James Gunn than most. I'm not really big on some of the humor that he's displayed in other movies. Like, I'm kind of hit miss when it comes to his films. I like Guardians 1, I like Guardians 3. I don't really like Guardians 2, and I am not that big of a fan of the Suicide Squad, which is ironic because the show is more or less kind of like the Suicide Squad, but not really. It's less Suicide Squad and definitely more like Task Force M, as Amanda Waller has said in promotional features. Like, it's Task Force monsters. They are monsters. They, like, I even think they said in the trailer, like Amanda Waller says in the trailer, and even, earlier on, these assholes aren't human. Because they're not, except for Rick Flag. And, it was fun. I was actually really surprised by how much fun I had with this series. And by the end of it, I was like, well, where do we see them next? Like, what happens next? Who will we see next? And where will we see next? I know for sure, we know for sure, Rick Flag will have a part to play in both Superman as well as Peacemaker Season 2. Where do the other characters fall in line with that? Couldn't tell you. Maybe they might show up in Peacemaker. I'm not so sure about Superman outside of Rick Flag, but I could definitely see some of these characters being in the background of Peacemaker Season 2, just as a wink and a nod. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing for me. Like, when this was announced, I was always kind of like, this is an interesting choice of characters, because I in the beginning, I felt like, oh, is this kind of like Doom Patrol, but just, like, again, because I know Creature Commandos has like a presence in like World War II or stuff like in the comics, I think. Mm-hmm. But with this, I'm like, what are we doing here? But then they said, that this will be taking place in the present time, and I'm like, okay, interesting. And again, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the Suicide Squad. There's moments in the Suicide Squad that I really enjoy. Like, I like some of the characters that we end up seeing in Peacemaker, but overall, like, seeing this, I'm like, I'm really happy that Creature Commandos is kind of like the replacement for Suicide Squad at this point, because of course, because we know that from what James has said that most of Peacemaker Season 1 is canon, by default, things from the Suicide Squad is canon. So we know that the Suicide Squad in the DC universe is defunct. I wouldn't be shocked if we never see Suicide Squad ever again at this point. They will do. I would be more surprised if we didn't see teams like Creature Commandos, Secret Six, and stuff like that to kind of like replace what Task Force X is, because it's now known to the whole world. But seeing these characters, I'm like, I think this is the kind of show that I relate more to, because again, these aren't necessarily villains who are now working for the government. It is more so that they are monsters. They are, and not like viciously monsters. I mean, we can talk about Dr. Phosphorus when it gets around, but like, I feel like when I look at most of these characters, I don't think supervillain who has to now work for Amanda Waller. I think of like, these are misfits who are being bullied out of society because of the way they look or the way that they were born and stuff like that. And so, which is, I think one of the reasons why I love Doom Patrol so much. These are misunderstood characters, and this is the same thing for Creature Commandos. And And the thing is, like, here's one of the things that James Gunn has always done so well since I first saw like Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is that he takes these smaller characters that mainstream may not know of, or even like us, like big passionate comic fans don't know of, and he kind of reinvents them and makes them work very much for the screen. Like I would never have guessed, in the year when they announced that James Gunn and Peter Safran were going to, restart, reboot the DC brand, that, the first thing we're going to get is an animated R-rated show. I would never have guessed that. Um, but again, we also know, because there were the strikes last year and so on, so that, they had to, shuffle some things around. But I like that this is very much like we get an appetizer, like James has been saying, of the DCU, but also like there's never points where I'm like, I kind of want to know like what's happening in Gotham City or Metropolis. Like, the story throughout the whole season, like you're invested in these characters. It doesn't feel like you're just like, okay, but now move to the side. I want to see them now. And I don't know. Was that kind of something you felt too, Lip?
I mean, I kind of agree. He's always gravitated towards the oddball characters. He's always made a name for himself by really adapting these characters and giving them a little bit of a glimmer of humanity, if you will. I mean, that's pretty prevalent through, I would say, the majority of the Commandos here. There are hints of freaks and geeks a little bit. All these characters are, as you mentioned, like they're kind of shunned from society from, be it their physical appearance or just things that they've done. Like, I don't really know. Without spoiling it, like the one that comes to mind immediately is probably GI Robot, who it's not quite for his appearance, but the things that he's done definitely lands him in Belle Reve, where he is, where we see him by this series, and then you get to characters like, same with Weasel, but then you get to a character like Nina Mazursky, and it's definitely more like, no, this was a character completely shunned out of the real world for some pretty unfortunate reasons. And like her story, I feel honestly is arguably probably the most tragic.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Like I can't wait to see how people respond to this show too, because it's going to be very interesting. And like you said, as even James Gunn has mentioned, like this is very much like the appetizer, the foot in the door to what his DCU will look like. And I feel like that is very much the case. Like there are a lot of really big, deep cut stuff that is prevalent throughout this series that I don't think you could say has been done as only more than minor teases in other shows and stuff like that. Like, I can't remember a time where I had so many different references to anything DC in a single TV show or movie. And this one project really lets you know, like, oh no, there is a much larger world. There are characters in it. They do exist. They are the characters you know and love so well. But we're focusing on this little group here. But yes, they do in fact exist in this much larger universe filled with, bigger characters.
Yeah, I want to talk about the animation because we both very much follow DC animation. And these last couple of years has been very hit or miss because whether it is like something strong as like Young Justice or kind of like the Tomorrowverse being very up and down. What do you think about the animation style and kind of just also the route they're now setting for animation for DC Studios? Because of course there will be different styles probably in other projects that are or aren't connected to the DCU, but again, this I remember like I remember it took a while for me to get used to the what if animation for Marvel. Like I didn't initially I didn't like it at all. I'm like, this feels like I'm watching like CGI figures just jumping around doing things. They didn't feel like very fluid. But with this, I instantly fell in love with it because I'm like, this doesn't look like a cartoon. This looks something like they it's a live action world, but it's almost like they're putting like an animation filter through where like again, it is very bloody, it's very gory. So like, how do you feel about the animation?
I thought it was actually a nice step up from the Tomorrowverse heavy line animation. I think it's very evocative, and when I watch the show, I could see, for example, I could see like through the animation, I could see Frank Grillo being this character. I could see, Sean Gunn doing his thing as, Weasel, like, because we've seen Weasel in the Suicide Squad, so it's very easy for me to like visualize what do these characters look like in live action. But to the point of animation, it's very fluid. It doesn't feel stiff. It doesn't feel stale in certain respects. I think it's again a step up from the Tomorrowverse stuff, which was the heavy preference for the last few years. And I'm kind of hoping that whatever they do next as far as animation goes is kind of in this same ballpark. I like this animation style a lot. It's almost to me like if Batman the Animated Series and Brave and the Bold had a happy mix between the two. It reminds me of that in a lot of ways. And obviously, you've got, and I also really like that the characters are how in other shows most characters are proportionally like almost the same height, same build, same all that. That's not the case here. Like every character looks distinctly different, and the animation services that quite well.
I had to look because I haven't watched Brave and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't very much of a fan of Brave and the Bold growing up. Again, like, I understand that show was more for kids, which I'm happy that kids can get their introduction to DC. But like for me, as someone who's like a grown up watching it, I'm like, this is not really for me. But I look at that animation and now looking at Batman animated series, like, yeah, you're very much correct. It feels like a very good, nice blend in between the two.
And I think the studio that did this was called Bobby Pills. I think Bobby Pills is the name of the studio who did the animation by way of WB Animation. But yeah, very much so.
Bobby Pills. What have they done before? I
think James Gunn mentioned that they're a French animation studio. So I don't know what else they've done.
Well, very good for them. They've done Captain Laserhawk. I think I've seen bits and pieces of that online before. Vermin, Pudo. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so it's they're definitely gonna get well more. It's definitely they're definitely gonna get a bigger spotlight now thanks to the show, and I'm hoping that. Because you were talking about like other animated shows. I'm hoping that Blue Beetle, when it goes forward, I hope that this will kind of be the style they go with.
Absolutely.
Because if it looks like, again, like I said, it looks like something like it translates very easily from live action to animation back and forth. We're like, because I didn't even think about when you pointed out that all the characters have different sizes and heights and whatnot, and that is refreshing actually. So, now so again, we get a good taste of all these characters throughout these 7 episodes, but who is your favorite commando?
Well, that's kind of tough. I like them all pretty evenly, but I gotta hand it to GI Robot. I think GI Robot's probably the funniest one. He's in my opinion, I thought he had one of the better episodes. Not that any were bad per se, but like of the episodes I remember off the top of my head, like I for sure lean towards the GI Robot one. There's a couple fun DC references in that episode specifically, but also just the his whole demeanor of like, oh, friend Nina, would you like to kill Nazis? Like everything he did was just so yes, I love this character, and I kind of want to see that character in live action, if I'm being brutally honest. I would love to see a homage or a spot of him just gunning down Nazis, because hey, Nazis are not cool. GI Robot's cool. That's enough said there, right?
Yeah, GI Robot is definitely he's my favorite. I do also really love Rick Flag Sr. because I thought he was going to be a lot more hard shelled, but like this is like there's some soft sides to Rick Flag Sr. that again, this is why I'm like, I love Frank Grillo. Like I've been a fan of his since I saw him on Prison Break in the early 2000s. Absolutely. And then of course one of the best films that I ever witnessed is Warrior, which he's in. Again, when I was talking to him for Screen Rant, I made it clear to him that I'm happy that a superhero universe is finally using you correctly, and that's all I will say about that, Marvel Studios. Oops, but no, I'm not. But I'm excited that he's going to be like one of the characters that is kind of like the connective tissue between some of these stories. I think he said something in an interview recently that he's kind of like the Nick Fury in a lot of ways.
Apparently, he's the head of Argus in this universe. It's not quite Amanda Waller; it's him. He's allegedly the
Yeah,
head of Argus, which is cool.
yeah, I saw the interview too, and I'm like, well, you know, that makes sense. You know, Amanda fucked up, and the Suicide Squad and Peacemakers. So you know, that's it is a little bit. It's very fun seeing Viola Davis in animation. Like she,
And she's still
like
his boss too. I think that's pretty awesome.
yeah, I you know, it is funny because like even though like Amanda is very very serious, just seeing like you're just hearing like, Amanda gets a little bit gets a little more sassy here than we've
Hmm.
seen her in other stuff, and I don't want to spoil the line, but like there's a funny moment when she's introducing Rick in episode 1. You know, again we've seen in the trailers that she's introducing him to these characters. But there's
Right.
something that she says where I'm like, I can tell that that Viola in the booth was saying like super seriously, but it's coming up as like really hysterical.
Yeah.
I am something I want to, you know, we can tease upon this is that um we do we do get a few, you know, glimpses of the DC universe. Again, it's again like it's not going to be something that just sets up the next movies or TV shows and so on, but like you get a sense of what's going on in other corners of the DCU.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it will be easier for us to talk about it when said episodes have aired. But yeah, there will
Absolutely.
definitely be,
Yeah.
yeah, we you know we when he had finished the season, I texted him. I'm like, you know, Twitter's gonna be on fire when happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think when a certain episode airs, there will be a definite reaction to it. Um, there's something that happens with GI Robot that I'm very excited about, and it's a very deep cut type of thing, and I wonder if people will catch on to it. I'm not sure that they will, but they might. I'll probably talk to you about that after we're done airing this, or when we're done recording. But like, there's definitely something big that happens towards the tail end of it too that I think will be quite the surprise for a lot of people. And yeah, to your point, like there are some very cool sprinkled references and surprises throughout this show that I think if you've been a long time DC fan, this rewards you in a very satisfying way.
Definitely. I want to talk because we didn't talk about her much. But you know, one of the villains of the show is Cersei,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just ready to see her. Like, I mean, I'm ready to see all of them in live action, but like with her, I'm like, fuck this. She's gonna be fun because again, I love something that I feel that we didn't get enough of in the DC EU was magic based characters. Like, I don't know why Warner Bros was like so afraid of like you know, staying away from that side of the DC canon. But yeah, you know, with Cersei we get a good taste of magic wielding people in this franchise, and I really want to see what her history with Wonder Woman is like, you know, because you know we don't know anything about Wonder Woman right now. We know that Paradise Lost is happening, but that's before she was born. So, but I wonder, you know, if Cersei and Diana have gone toe to toe yet at this point.
Well, it's fun to think about too because of the Absolute Wonder Woman book that just released. Cersei has a pretty huge part to play in that as well, and you know they've got a really great actress in Anya Chalotra playing Cersei, and the way that Cersei is depicted in this, I think the smart thing to do that I think James Gunn is navigating is like anything that had been done in the DCEU won't necessarily be retreaded on in the DCU, i.e., we had 2 Wonder Woman films in the DC Extended Universe. Now that we're in the DCU, we're going to get glimmers and hints of things pertaining to Wonder Woman, but when we will see her remains to be seen, which is fine considering the reception of Wonder Woman 84. I think that's being taken into a little bit of account, but even still, like having that presence just relevant is good enough for me for now. And to your point, when Paradise Lost comes out, you know, it's essentially like a prequel to the whole Wonder Woman story. We will see like how, you know, allegedly like some kind of Themysciran civil war. Will Cersei have played a part in that? I don't know. It'd be pretty cool if that was the case, and maybe Anya
Oh yeah,
Chalotra show
she
up.
could be
Yeah,
more she could be immortal. Because I
definitely.
am because for some reason I was like I thought Cersei was Themyscirian, but like apparently like in like because I was replaying DC Universe Online recently, and apparently she's not like she's not a Themyscirian. So, but you know, but like you know, Sorceress could still be some people who lived along for a very long time. So why not? Um, Anything else you want to touch upon? The people should look forward to, that we can tease before we wrap up our advanced review.
Yeah, I would say if you're skeptical of anything pertaining to James Gunn, at the very least, give it a chance. Like, don't let the internet form your opinion for you, like so many things tend to. Again, like the animation is fantastic. The story is actually pretty consistent, like all the way through it. Like, yeah, there is a little bit of like this character, this episode, sure, but like the consistency that continues through the entire 7 episodes is very much prevalent. I would say again that like the surprises are very deep cut. If you are a longtime DC fan, you will be rewarded for sure. And I would also say that like I hope if people do watch this, they kind of come out finding their own favorite character in the way that you and I found GI Robot. That's kind of my hope. And like they have a great antagonist in Circe. I think that they did the character for what was shown to us. Like they did it pretty solidly, all things considered. And again, it's like I wouldn't say go into this expecting it to be like the what's happening next, but more so like what does this world have to offer? That's the best way I think I could say it. Like, don't go in expecting what happens next after it. Go into it with the mindset of like, what is this world going to show me?
Exactly, and because I think that something that I'm excited for James Gunn's DC universe is the fact that it's not necessarily going to follow the Marvel format of like where we have like, again, we were talking about it before, but like, I'm also serious is that not having a bunch of Infinity Stones is kind of like Infinity Stones that will drive and connect so much of the story and all. Is for me like this feels like, okay, let's do a little different introduction to the DC universe, and like doing R-rated. I mean, there is so much. There's some steamy moments in this show. There, again, the cussing is hilarious in this, and and I also think that this is some of the best DC animated action sequences that I've seen in a very long time.
Oh yeah, there's a fight that happens very, very early on that is like, for animation, this is pretty top fucking notch.
Yeah, so even though
Matter of fact, I'll put it in the private chat just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But
yeah, let's see. Let me. Now I want to see what he's gonna say. Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah. That fight was dope as fuck.
Yeah,
that was a fun fight.
That was a fun fight. But yeah, if you guys have thoughts about Creature Commandos or speculations or, your expectation of Creature Commandos, leave them out, sound off in the comments below. So the way that Creature Commandos podcast is going to work is me and Liv we will have episodes out on Thursdays for you to enjoy after you watch Creature Commandos on Max. The first 2 episodes will be streaming starting Thursday, December 5th. I don't know what time yet because
I don't think they announced a time.
What have they done with previous Max shows?
So with Penguin, they did a Thursday premiere at 6:00 my time, which would be 9:00 Eastern time. So I'm on Pacific time. So it's 6:00 my time. As far as I think I even told you when it came to My Adventures with Superman, they aired the show on Adult Swim Saturday nights. And then Sunday morning at like 6 a.m. my time was when the episode would go up on Max. Now that since this is a Max original, they have not clarified what time this will premiere on Thursdays. I mean, I'm hoping for like right at midnight on Thursday, but we'll see. Time will tell. We're just about a week away, so we shall see.
We'll know soon. So, and what you guys can do also is that you can, because we will of course read listener feedback, but it will be, for every episode 1 and 2, we might read those feedback on episode 3 or 4, depending on when we record and so on. So, but yeah, we still want to hear from you about your thoughts on Creature Commandos. You can always add us on when it comes to Twitter. You can do it at Multiverse Color or at DC Studio Podcast. We're all on social media, also on Facebook and Instagram, and all the links are in the show notes. We're probably gonna create like a cool little like clip segments of where you can find us on socials that way, so that we don't. Because again, I noticed that when we were doing the Penguin podcast, that it's a lot to ramble to go through every week. So but it's gonna be a blast, and we get to experience these universe together, and hopefully there will be lots of news and updates about other product in between that we'll get to talk some updates on, or who knows, maybe there will be things that James Gunn has posted on threads that will reply to on threads that we get to kind of lean back and enjoy. So yeah, so Lip, where can people find you on social media and anything else and your other projects that you do?
Well, obviously, I'm on Multiverse of Color. I write for TV shows. I do Superman and Lois. Going to be doing Creature Commandos as well. I'm going to be doing Star Wars, the Skeleton Crew as well. It's going to be a very fun week.
You're going to have a packed week next week.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Between the finale of Superman and Lois, Creature Commandos, and Star Wars, because Star Wars is now doing a 2-episode premiere, and I'm just like, oh, great. You guys can catch me pretty much everywhere except for Twitter X. I am not on that application. I have left that. I left that place. I want to say exactly a year ago. This month, matter of fact, maybe within like the last few days was my 1-year anniversary of not being on Twitter. But I'm pretty much everywhere else. Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Vero. It's just at Unfiltered with 3 Ds and 1 L. But yeah, you can listen to my Batman podcast, which I do host with a good friend of mine. Although he's probably not going to be on for a minute because he's dealing with some more life stuff, unfortunately. But yeah, I host a Batman podcast called The Eternal Night, and we've got some really cool shit. I can't wait to continue talking about Creature Commandos and whatever else is in the pipeline for the DCU. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You can find me at AnimeBite on all social media platforms. I'm a senior writer at ScreenRant.com, where I also have interviews with various Creature Commandos cast members and the showrunners, so you can go and enjoy them right now. And of course, I'm the editor-in-chief of multiverseofcolor.com. Go check out everyone's amazing coverage of films and TV shows and movies and what have you, from all our talented writers, from Vanessa to Liv to Genevieve, just saying some reacts, lots of good people there. While my show is on hiatus right now, go check out the Showrunner Whisper at showrunnerwhisper.com, which is an MOC original where I talk to various Hollywood showrunners and go inside, go deeper into their minds about what it's like to be a showrunner in today's Hollywood landscape and television landscape, because it's always massively changing. So, and yeah, I'm also a streamer on Twitch, Kick, and YouTube. So check me out. Playing video games, not well, but who doesn't love to see someone play video games horribly for hours? But yeah, that's going to complete our Creature Commandos Advanced Review. Join us on Thursdays as we discuss every episode of Creature Commandos Season 1. Cannot wait for you to get to experience the show for the first time. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and it's time. James Gunn's DCU is finally going to be here, and it's because it's been a very light year for DC. It's not been a lot of releases, so it's from here on, we're the train is just pumping. So until next time, I'm Andy,
and I'm Phil. Lip, whatever your preference is.
We'll see you next time on the Creature Commandos podcast.